Hello, Beth. Nice to see you today.
Hey. Hey, how are you?
Good. Very, very happy that you made some time to join us today to talk about Rankin McKenzie and how it all works. So we get a lot of questions from prospective clients about what is the what is a fractional CFO? How do I explore potentially hiring a fractional CFO or controller with Rankin McKenzie? And once they reach out, that step always starts with you. So I'd love if you would give us a little bit of an introduction of yourself and your role with Rankin McKenzie, which is very unique, and then explore a little bit more about how that client exploration works.
Yeah, of course, happy to. So I have happily been at Rankin McKenzie for around 13 years, and there are, over 30 partners here, and I am the only one that is not a CFO or a controller. So a little unusual for a model of fractional CFOs and controllers. My sole focus is business development, that and helping to find talent to join our team. And so, yeah, my role is to really help find solid clients and good partners and match them up.
Your website makes it sound very easy, simple three-step process. If I'm a prospect considering whether a CFO, a fractional CFO is right for me and my company, all I really need to do is reach out and fill out the form on the website. But then what happens? Can you walk me through the process, starting from step one, which is you schedule a complimentary business needs and team personality assessment. I'd love to know more about what each of those things mean.
So the initial meeting typically with a client comes in a variety of ways, but most often they reach out through our website or people are referred to us by other trusted folks that we work with. And so once I get introduced, typically to the business owner, but once I get introduced to that business owner, we either set up a call or in person if they're local. And I meet with them and assess a variety of factors, basically. Look at the company, the personalities, the different systems they're using, what industry they're in, obviously. All the parts and pieces that go into making their business. And probably most importantly, from a finance perspective, what keeps them up at night. And then I take all of that information and write my famous 2 and 3 page summaries. And then I start looking at the partners on the team to see who could be a fit from a personality perspective. And that's as important for the CEO because they'll be hand in hand together, but it's also, will they interact well with the team if there's a team in place? So personality, and then of course experience. Sometimes industry experience is important, sometimes it's not as important. And then of course bandwidth. And then if the partner is in agreement that it could be a good fit, I go back to that business owner and I share the profile of that partner and explain why I think they could be a good fit for them. And then typically they agree that it could be, and let's do a meeting. And then we meet all over again. And then it's almost more of a, I don't want to say interview process, but similar to an interview process. Are we going to be a good fit for each other? I don't do a lot of talking on that second call. I'm there to observe and listen, but I do write all the proposals moving forward. So I'm there to make sure I can hear everything that's being discussed. And then after that, if everyone's in agreement, yeah, this is a fit, then we go back and we write a proposal, which then is presented to the client. But that proposal is really a customized scope of work. With an estimation of days per week or hours per week, what rate it's going to be. And so it's very transparent out of the gate. I mean, these are finance people. So there's, everything's very transparent. And then quite honestly, it could be a matter of, depending, the process can be a matter of 2 to 3 days. And that proposal could be sent over. And then it just depends on availability and bandwidth, what that start date is. And that's always discussed prior to the proposal being sent.
Wow. So 2 or 3 days to get a proposal after that second meeting. What's the typical timeline look like from a client prospect reaching out on the website and getting that proposal in hand?
So when a prospective client reaches out to us or is referred to us, the timeline is really typically more dependent on them and their schedule. Sometimes they want to meet, within a couple of days. Sometimes it's a couple of weeks. So it's really more dependent on them and my schedule, obviously, as well. But usually within a week or two, we're having initial meetings. And then I would say on average, from the very first meeting, if they are interested in an accelerated schedule, it could usually be within a couple of weeks that we could be hitting the ground running. And then sometimes the timeline's a little longer. Quite frankly, some clients, the house is on fire, and sometimes they're just ready to, slowly move forward. So the timeline is more client dependent than us dependent.
How often do you get the experience where someone finally reaches out, they go through this very smooth process, and they say, my gosh, I wish I'd done this last year, a month ago, 6 months ago? I imagine that's quite often.
Clients seem to find a lot of value in what we do in a very short time frame. And, they find it very interesting. Typically, our contracts are actually month to month. And they have been since the beginning of time, since we've been doing this for 22 years. So always month to month. And the reason for that, we're not looking to lock anyone into anything long term. We think the value will speak for itself very quickly, and it will just continue because it should continue. And that is the case. Average client is 3 to 5 years. And the reason that a client engagement ends is that we've done our job and grown them to such a size they need someone full time. We will help them find that resource, and we will train and move on to the next growth company, or we will help get them sold. And sometimes that's their desire, to get acquired or to sell. So yeah.
I'd love to go back to explore more about personality, and the fact that you don't have a finance background, I think is a really interesting asset and value add to this process, because I, as an outsider looking in, would have thought, there's nothing more important than experience within the vertical or recent industry experience, and of course that does come into play, but I've heard you and other team members say that's really not paramount, and personality is one of the main factors that you're looking at. Can you tell me more about that? Because I think that might be unique in this space. I'd love to hear more about what makes for good fit in your mind as you're looking at partners that are available. Walk me through a bit of your thought process on how you go about matching personalities, because very often the client, the partner that you present the client is the partner they move forward with. And rare occasions they say, I'd like to see someone else, but very often it's that very first partner, because you do such a good job matching team and personality. I'd love to know more about how that works, what you're thinking, how that makes you unique in the space.
So the personality matching, I guess, if you will, it's interesting. So I guess I'll back up. So we are very methodical and stringent in who we bring on board at Rankin McKenzie, and so I am pretty involved in that from the start. And so it's important, because then I get a sense of people, who they are, where they've been, what they like, what they want to do. Do they want to explore different industries? Do they like to stay in one industry? Where they are in life? What are their goals? And so I just get a really, really good sense of who they are. And then obviously in the onboarding process, I handle their onboarding. And so again, helping them get their bio ready for the website and things of that nature. So I really just get to understand who they are as a person. And so when we start doing business development meetings together, again, it's part of learning even more about who they are and what they like. And so when I meet a CEO, I have a really good idea of what everyone is like on my team. And so it's then understanding who that CEO is, how they like to communicate, what they like. And that's important, because I find when we come into these small to mid-sized companies, these growth companies, we are often that trusted advisor to a CEO. And it's not going to last 3 to 5 years, as our typical engagements do. It's not going to last that long if they can't get along. And so the personality is as important as the skill set. And we've discussed in the past. There's certain industries such as manufacturing or nonprofit or government grant that they definitely have nuances. But a lot of times the financial skills that these guys bring to the table can be, they can relate to multiple industries. And so if it's that right personality, sometimes it doesn't have to be industry specific experience. So yeah, the personality is really just me getting to know them from the interviewing through the onboarding, and as we continue forward together. So, I mean, I've been working with some of these folks now some for 2 years and some for 7. Well, some have been here 17 years. I've been working with them for 13 years. So
it sounds like it's all of those components that we think of as personality, energy, communication style, how, I don't want to use the word aggressive, but how all of those aspects of personality mesh. And so you mentioned that, you get to know our partners or your partners at Rankin McKenzie really well, but you've got a very short amount of time to make that assessment with a prospective client. So how do you size up a client quickly to try to figure out what's going to work well for them?
So when I meet with a client, it is interesting trying to assess. I mean, obviously assess their personality, how they like to communicate, how they like to interact. Do they like in person? Do they prefer Zoom? It's all those parts and pieces that go into it, but it's also sometimes where they are in the company growth. Is there something going on that they feel it's an emergency, or is it, listen, here's where I want to go in 5 years and I know I need help to get there. And so, it doesn't sound like personality, but it's all part of that same ball of energy that they bring to the table, how urgent it is, or it's not, or it's just a matter of where they are in their life and what stage their company is at is sometimes just as important in kind of who we choose and who can help them reach that next milestone.
Do you find typically that a high energy client needs a high energy CFO, or is it almost the opposite where you have a balancing force that you're bringing to that team?
And again, that really is specific to each business owner. But yeah, there's some that are live wires, and you can just tell that there just needs to be a calming force within that space, right? And then there's some that wouldn't be able to work with someone if they weren't a live wire. And so it's really, and it sounds funny, but within an hour, if you truly spend an hour with someone and really listen, you can figure it out, basically. You really can. You can figure it out, kind of what they're looking for, if you will, and what you think will best fit for them.
Well, you say you can figure it out, but you come from sort of an agency background, and so do I, and not a finance background, and I would suggest that this sort of highly tuned ability that you've developed at understanding personalities and team dynamics is not necessarily universal in the finance world. There's a lot of jokes about the sort of temperaments that find their way into finance and accounting. So I do think that's a really interesting aspect of what it's like to engage with Rankin McKenzie. And are you seeing that when clients are looking at a full-time hire or a freelancer or perhaps other fractional firms? How much of this personality fit and our attention to that would you say is the secret to your success versus other options that clients might be exploring?
I think it's interesting. When the founders and I met, it really isn't common to bring someone with a marketing background into the CFO world. And so, we kind of dipped our toe in it at the beginning and realized that it was working. And I think the reason it works is that I highly value who they are and what they provide as functional experts. I mean, they are just rock stars at what they do. But on the flip side, they appreciate very much what I do, and they don't really care to do it per se. They'd rather go in and help the client. And so it's just kind of a nice marriage, if you will. They like the fact that someone is out there trying to find the right match for them. Because at the end of the day, we want our clients happy, but I really want my CFOs and controllers to be happy as well. I want this to be a long-term career choice for them. And so it's appreciated, I would say, on both sides of what each other brings to the table. And it's not necessarily common that someone with a marketing background works with a lot of CFOs, controllers, and CPAs.
Well, you brought up the term, so I'll put it out there. You're playing matchmaker, and I think that's really interesting, because from a client perspective, you're worried about does a candidate have the functional experience and depth that they need, and so it's because as a CFO or a CEO, finance is probably not your background, and so it's very easy to say, hey, I'm looking at a pool of candidates, and I'm trying to know can they do everything that they need functionally, and then I put that question of personality and team dynamics, perhaps aside. And from the partner perspective, the same thing. I know many of your partners are relieved that this is something that they don't have to think about and worry about, is business development and having someone who knows them so well, placing them essentially where they're going to be a good fit.
I think that it's important to note as well that the CEO of a company, I think, gets a little bit of a sense of relief knowing that all of our partners have a minimum of 15 years experience. So they understand that, when someone's walking through the door, most likely they're going to have 20 years or more experience. They bring that bravado with them, that there's a good understanding of finance, because a lot of CEOs don't necessarily have a finance background. And so it is a little bit of a foreign world to them. Obviously, they've gotten where they are because they had to have some sort of understanding of it. But oftentimes, small to mid-sized companies are at that inflection point of, I need to get to the next point, and I don't know if I'm the one to get it there, either it be with banking relationships, raising money. They have so much else to focus on. They can't focus on it all, quite frankly. And so that's where that fractional resource is typically a really good fit.
Fantastic. It sounds like there's an easy process, a really comfortable process. I, as a client prospect, only have to fill out the form and go from there. So I'd love to end today with, for those watching this video, how do I know if I could fill out the form? How do I know if this is something that is a waste of my time? Because everyone's busy, and even though you do all the work and make it very easy, everyone's busy, and there's always a little trepidation. It's difficult when you're trying to find partners and team members at that executive level. So if I'm watching this, what would you say to me to say, I'm a good candidate to work with Rankin McKenzie or not?
So I would encourage any prospective partner, and I would encourage any prospective client to fill out the form on our website. And here's why. So if you are a prospective partner, we will review very quickly. And if for whatever reason it's not a fit, we'll let you know ASAP. But I'll also keep that resume. And sometimes I get contacted for a full-time role, and that's not us. And so there's that aspect. And then as a prospective client, I would absolutely fill out the form. And of course, I'm always going to reach out. And if we're not a fit, then I may know of other resources in the community that could be a fit, and happy to connect anyone with those resources. Sometimes we'll have prospective partners reach out to us thinking they want a full-time job, and I can connect them with some really great recruiters in the area. So again, we're just happy to help make the right connections, whether it's us or not.
Fantastic. Well, Beth, thanks so much for your time today. I know that Rankin McKenzie is constantly complimented on how easy it is to work with you and your fantastic partners. thank you for telling us a little bit more about how to get started.
Thank you. This was great. Thanks so much.
You bet.